background on the infrastructural overview. It was all together once in the document. We've just separated out from a land use discussion into the infrastructural background stuff and put that infrastructure at the back.
Okay. All right.
Can I?
Kiwi?
Yep, I'm just a bit concerned here that we perhaps don't say the obvious here. Why you've included all this in here is actually to encourage would-be developers and investors to understand the context of that industrial land that they may choose to invest in, right? This is part of the council's huge effort to promote industrial growth, and I think we perhaps need to say that. It's just sort of, it's bland, it just goes up.
It is a bit bland. It's really background information to, if you're going to say that, I would suggest
Mr Gibbs, can I just butt in here, please, because I was thinking the same thing when Councillor McKelvey come up. I think this whole background part of this, whatever you're saying, and you've written it through there, and you might need to put it a little bit more simpler in the front of what all this background information is. Because if I'm getting councillors in here can't quite pick it up and understand it, there's going to be a lot of people out there who, if they may pick this up, might struggle with it.
Yes. Perhaps I can understand the comment. I'm just wondering whether that shouldn't sit up on page 24 that discusses about how we're going to zone the land, and that we're going to do it, zone it unserviced because, and this is the background information for why we're not zoning it without that unserviced on it.
Whatever.
So any discussion about why we're still zoning it, even though it's got to be unserviced, because we are still trying to promote, probably should sit in the front part. That comment, than in the technical dry stuff that says, well, in this area you've got a bit of a water issue. And
let's put it somewhere where you think someone will pick it up and read it, rather than put it somewhere where it gets lost.
So I suggest it's up around page 24.
Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and can you have a little thing at the bottom that says, for detail, please refer to?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
All right. Now that takes me to page 80. That's the same, what was dealing with the same thing. Sorry, 78. Now we're in page 79. Oh, Councillor Bernard.
Yeah.
Airport land.
I have a bit of a challenge, or a rather large challenge, with Area 3 airport land. In the first 3 paragraphs, we seem to be saying something different to what we were discussing and agreeing on in this document here. I don't recall that we agreed on that the airport will provide its own on-site wastewater solutions. Nor do I recall that there's going to be a medium term, which according to this document is up to 12 years, going to be any inactivity as far as wastewater upgrades are concerned, and that the airport will find its own self-contained wastewater solution. Now, what I read here in this document there is that page 40. The majority of members indicated their support that the land be rezoned industrial, unserviced, with the addition of wording that noted Council's commitment to improve wastewater provisions, brackets, within the next 5 years, end of bracket, in accordance with Environment's Waikato's variation, which is contrary to what you're actually indicating and saying here.
Okay. This...
Oh, there, sorry.
Then, if anywhere, I would suggest that what you've read out there would go into the airport section at the front, because again, the situation as it is now out there is that it only has limited water supply and no wastewater. So back into the industrial zoning, perhaps under the airport section, we can say something there, because I think it says under unserviced zoning, it says council will in all these areas continue to look at them from time to time through LTCCP reviews and the provision of infrastructure. So if nothing happens, you may well get there before a developer does, or you may not. So, and the airport's no different. That's no different than, say, Broadlands Road, that needs also some water and wastewater.
Except that in the case of the airport, we don't actually have a choice as regards to LTCCP is concerned. We, in fact, are obliged to find the money in the LTCCP within 5 years. Otherwise, we'll be running amok with EW.
But you could find enough money just to patch up the existing situation and make no provision for anything else. There will be a minimum you have to do, and then there will be a structure plan direction that you might want to do.
The airport is at the minimum right now. We cannot expand because we are right at the very limit of our expansion thing. And as I say,
so's everywhere, though.
I understand it, but what I'm saying is that the intent and the discussion here is contrary to what the intent and the discussion is here in that background paper.
Well, I think, Councillor Bernard, if it's any help, what Mr Gibbs has suggested is that we put an explanation under that particular heading that he did say under industrial with regards to the airport, explaining that and addressing that. And then put a reference number on this page, refer back to page 25 or 26.
And we may reflect that also. Nick's just saying that maybe we'll reflect that decision twice.
I think so. Just for clarity.
Yes, Councillor McKelvey.
Yeah, I think, Mr Chairman, it's to be consistent. We have to change the information on page 78.
Yeah.
Just in exactly the same way if you have seriously amended the economic report to reflect the decisions of this council. This one needs seriously amending so that it's in line and doesn't create. I mean, if you read, say it goes somewhere on page 24 or wherever it is. What's the page where the airport is?
Well, I'm sure you guys can summarise that a little bit better to reflect Councillor Bernard's concerns. Guys?
Yeah.
Did you hear me?
It's good.
Thank you. Page 79. Shouldn't be too many comments on that.
Hang on, I haven't got there yet. No.
Yeah, I just want to make a point here, Mr Chairman.
Yep.
The Gabbity's Porter report, the second one, was September 2009. And we requested that as a consequence of not being happy with some of the earlier traffic management work.
Yeah, what's there?
I just want to make the point that I think it needs to be noted that it was not somewhere, it needs to be noted it's in the minutes. And I think it needs to be noted somewhere in the document as to when it was available to council to make those decisions. And it was made available on the Friday before the deliberations.
Well, I don't think that needs to go in the structure
No, the
plan.
point I'm making is that there's a time thing here. And that detail doesn't need to go in, but the time at which the Gabbity's Porter 2009 is reflected in the decisions perhaps needs to somewhere be stated in relation to the traffic management.
Just to be really clear, the Gabbity's Portal report was reflected in the draft structure plan that went out for consultation, as inputted by council officers, and that report and its findings were made available to council before the draft structure plan went out for consultation. Now, there was not a request for a hard copy of that report previously until Councillor Welsh in the hearings requested it. But certainly the findings were made available to council during the development of the structure plan.
The report wasn't made available.
All right.
It's just the
Point
time
noted.
of it as to when it became. It didn't impact on the council's decisions on the draft because we didn't have it, but it impacted on the final decisions. That's the point I'm making. And whether that is relevant or not, I'm just making that point. Because it changed, we have changed a lot of the traffic management quite significantly as a consequence of having access to that report in July this year.
Okay, well,
I'll leave it to you, Mr. Chairman, on that one.
79. Anything else on 79?
We received it on the 2nd of July.
Appendix, page 80. I hope no one's going to pull me up on anything on page 80. Righto, 81 maps. Wasn't this one, someone raised something
yes,
about this earlier on in the day?
83, map 83.
81.
81.
81.
Explanation
81 that
to
these
locate
numbers need
areas
to-
and page numbers.
The numbers need to make something, and this particular map then needs, those numbers need to link through to the following ones.
All right.
And it was looking at that other map in the first draft.
Yeah. I'm putting another map in before we get to,
Page 82, 83.
Yeah. 82's okay. 83. Remove the back line.
This is the one where I believe it is important to note that the landscape assessment was not undertaken on the land proposed to be zoned industrial on Arataki Road.
We've made a note that that dark line comes out off around that land because these are the technical, should be the technical ones as done.
And we've made another note when we gave the synopsis of the landscape assessment that did not specifically include those sites on Arataki.
But it needs to be noted also on this key, to be fair.
But it won't appear, the land just won't appear on,
appear on,
it's
he's
just not
taken
going to
the
appear,
black
it's
line
coming
out.
off. The dark line just comes off it.
He's taken it out.
Because they're only the maps that they looked at.
All right. Councillor Bernard.
I hate to be a real pain, but there is in fact a mistake, because on page 81 by the airport you have included the gully and the whatever you want to call it on the eastern side, but on page 23 you haven't.
That's right, we shrunk that land. They looked at a larger area of land northwest of the airport, and that land was shrunk as we went through the process to remove some of the most difficult stuff and the more unlikely land.
And that's why you'll see this area here, for example, included in the constraints analysis, but then that didn't get carried through into the land use map.
Land use map.
Similarly with Rangitere E, they also appear on physical constraints area map 1 because they were one of the areas we originally looked at, but then that obviously hasn't come through into the land use mapping.
But is it obvious? Unless you state it. You know these things. How somebody that's interested in that, say on page, 86, just say, for example, somebody's interested in that fawn and brown area. I mean, how are they going to know that? It's got high sensitivity written on it.
On page 67, we do have a paragraph which says, from the information in the technical reports, a series of sieve maps were derived. These identified the various influencing factors and showed where there were areas of overlap. Copies of the sieve maps can be found in the appendix. Do you want us to expand
Where
that
you
paragraph
got
to
referred to the copy of those maps in the appendix, refer them back to that page. Councillor Kelly.
I guess what I'm going to raise here, Mr. Chairman, it's probably frightfully unpopular, but I'm just wondering whether this background information being attached as appendices is more trouble than it's worth. Because you're going to be forever having people asking you to take them through the steps. Why is this here and why is that here?
Well, you should say that, Councillor Kelly. I just whispered in Mr. Green's ear about that.
And I've just opened that up for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Are we required